8:30 a.m. Mr. Tankersley, can you open us up with?
I sure can. If you'll please bow your head with me. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today thankful for the many blessings that you bestow upon us. Ask that you will help us be mindful of taking care of the dealings of the city of San Angelo today and be good stewards of the trust we have been given. Lord, I ask that you will be with the men and women in harm's way and overseas and bring them home to their families as safe as soon as possible. And I also ask that you will help us be mindful of what we can do for you. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
All right, on to our next item, number 3, public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit their remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. So we'll go ahead and open up for public comment. Seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close the public comment and move on to the consent agenda. In the consent agenda, I'd like to pull item 4C to be discussed. An item in the regular agenda, item 5K. Everyone okay with that?
I'll make a motion that we approve the other 2 items.
Okay. Second. Second by Bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion carries. Moving on to the regular agenda. 5A, update regarding the 2017 Ports to Plains annual meeting held in Lubbock, September 12th through the 14th, 2017. Presentation by Mayor Brenda Gunter and COSA-DC Director John Barrio.
Excuse my tardiness, everyone. Sorry.
What's going on, Todd? Long time, man.
How are we, guys?
Good.
Good morning, everybody. Brenda Gunter, Mayor of San Angelo.
Good morning.
The great news about Ports to Plains is there continues to be tremendous support all the way along the route. The attendance at the convention was terrific. Support is terrific. But the news is kind of the following, and that is that with very limited funds available, the concept of really making I-27 an interstate is going to be a long, challenging road because the money really isn't there. We had a couple presentations from the TxDOT people, and their message was not necessarily a positive message. They put out there all the issues regarding when you start taking a look at traffic count and population, I-27 doesn't figure out up to be a high priority. They talked a lot about I-69 having a terrific strategy and something that they are looking at. And so I-27 becomes sort of the third level down in terms of interest. So we are going to have to make a much stronger case. We're going to have a lot of statistics that can say it does justify the money. But if we also can take a look at it and say the following is that we talk about I-27 being an interstate, but if we can have a mindset that says we need improved roadways, and if we can continue the conversation of investing money in improved roadways while we wait for monies to become available to make it an interstate, then we will benefit. We sometimes forget that the conversation about expanding 277 South and putting passing lanes on 277 South from San Angelo to Del Rio was part of and is part of the I-27 conversation. I can't imagine today those passing lanes not existing because there's tremendous traffic from San Angelo South. And so we've benefited from that. We also have to take a look at it in terms of knowing that we have 4-lane highways that are better than having 2-lane highways. And so we've got to look at it, I believe, in small steps, improved steps to make the transportation issues better transportation issues. But it's going to be a long, hard-fought battle to get I-27 up and running south of Lubbock in terms of true interstate. We certainly have numbers that say 3 times the number of fatalities will happen in out here in rural Texas than they happen on I-35 because so much of the transportation's going like this, not like this. And so you look at those numbers, but even if you look at those numbers, the number of cars and vehicles on I-35 still outnumber. And if you think about trying to divert traffic, freight traffic, from I-35 over to here, right now the statistics don't look positive in terms of that conversation. So we're going to have to fight harder, we're going to have to be smarter, and we're going to have a lot better numbers to make sure that the I-27 conversation continues to happen, that there is progress made, and that we have improved roadways to justify our work and our effort.
Thank you, Brenda. John Barrio, I am one of the directors on this board, and I also attended the Ports to Plains Conference as a representative of this board. I can't help but second everything Brenda has just shared. One of the points I made in our Ports to Plains Alliance board meeting, which preceded the actual conference, was that in order to get this done, we might have to have a broader national view rather than simply Ports to Plains. It's not just a corridor west of I-35 from Canada to Mexico for us. It is the next step in the westward expansion of the entire United States. I-35 has demonstrated itself to be at capacity now, and they're struggling to increase that capacity. The next logical step would be to improve the transportation 1 degree further west, being the I-27 corridor, as we hope to one day have it fully designated. But in doing that, it's going to be a step-by-step process, as Brenda pointed out. We start with the roadways that are there, the rights of way that are there. Some's going to have to be added. Land's going to have to be purchased or acquired, and then existing roads expanded, eventually what they call a Super 2, which is having the passing lanes, and then ultimately a 4-lane, and then dividing the 4-lane. There is a genealogy to it that has to take place. But until we start recognizing that this is part of a national plan and not just a narrow strip cutting through the country, it'll be difficult for the other legislative bodies to swallow it. Right now, our own Texas representatives are having difficulty because we are so much less populated along this corridor as compared to I-35. Essentially, they have more voting power over there to designate the state funds. So the only way to really move those funds over here is to help them see that this will be the next step in the total state and national growth. One of the presenters at the conference was a gentleman by the name of Doug Griffiths. He's quite a learned man, lives in a little community up in Canada. But he has published a book, 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. I grabbed an extra copy, and he was kind enough to sign it for us. I'm going to give that to Roland to put in the COSA DC library. Hopefully anybody that wants to read it can. But essentially, progress is going to happen. There are some folks who will dig their heels in and say San Angelo doesn't need an interstate. But the reality of it is, if we don't grow with the rest of the body, this member will be eventually fallen by the wayside. We have to keep up with what's going to happen anyway. It's going to be a long time. Our children, our grandchildren may be the ones that actually see I-27 come to reality. But unless we start to nurture it now in a more vigorous way, then we will be behind the curve on it. I also brought some other brochures and such. A couple things to give to the board members and staff. Lapel pins. Everybody wants a little bling, right? But do y'all have any questions for Brenda or I?
Let me just make a comment on this 13 ways to kill your community. We believe the gentleman who presented had such a strong message that there is a gentleman from a company here in San Angelo that is working to bring him here to make a presentation to some selected people for a dinner and an event. And of course, all of you will be invited to that event. But we think that message was so strong, so important and so necessary for all of us as a community to come together and try to work in the same direction, the same highway going north or south instead of in opposite directions and against each other. So you will get an invitation. We hope to do that at the end of January. He primarily is trying to book some other things out here in West Texas, so we can get him here for minimal amount of fees that will in fact be paid for by private funds. But we look forward to that invitation to you all.
I have a question.
Yes, David?
So, the corridor has varying degrees of improvement on the highways.
Correct.
From San Angelo to Lubbock on US 87 is 4 lanes divided.
Correct.
So, is there a way to segment this into doing it in pieces? It seems like it would be a lot more expensive to do a Super 2 to an interstate standard than it would be for 87 to be upgraded to interstate standards. Has that been looked at, or is that discussed in any way that, or is it just the same amount of money to do the whole thing?
No, they're looking at it in pieces. There's certainly a lot more interest in the pieces surrounding Lubbock and Amarillo, again, because of numbers, population numbers. But it will be done in pieces. It will not be done as a whole. So you will see, just as I said, pieces like 277, passing lanes. There will be pieces that do become from 2 to 4 lane to interstate. So it will not be a big project because the funds will never be there to do it as a project. So it will be a series of events. But pieces will happen.
Any other questions?
John, you were saying we have to look at this on a national type. What is the attitude of our national government? I mean, is there any gauge on any of that, or?
That is an excellent question. As far as the national interest, that is part of what the Ports to Plains Alliance is all about. One of their primary functions is to lobby to get the attention of those who will influence the money coming in, because let's face it, none of this moves without money. There are those parties who are addressing the interstate expansion. There hasn't been a new interstate really designated in a number of years. Yes, they've expanded I-14, but there were already segments of that. But they declared the interstate highway system completed a number of years ago. I'll share a brief history of the interstate highway system. When President Eisenhower was in the Army, he was a transportation officer and was put in command of the first cross-country convoy of military vehicles. It took months. There are statistics on it, just the number of tires they used. But they had to go through every little city and burg, a lot of dirt roads. But he envisioned a transportation system that would connect the whole country, primarily the east and west coast. That's why you see the major highways are east and west, not north and south. We always considered Mexico and Canada allies. Made sense. But the point was to be able to mobilize convoys that wouldn't have to go through congested areas, and in order to militarize the system in a time of war, it would take 4 MPs to shut down an entire interchange. That's the reason for the limited access. Now, the serendipity that we as the civilian population have always enjoyed is that in time of peace, that highway system, that defense system, is open to our use. So there is a leg of this lobby addressing the Pentagon, saying, with the global war that we're seeing now, we need connectivity west of I-35. Putting that into perspective, the cost of the entire I-27 project, upgrading the whole thing from Canada to Mexico, is roughly equivalent to purchasing 1 aircraft carrier. Digest that for a moment, okay? So there could be, should we get defense enthusiasm, a rapid influx of money. But it's not necessarily shovel-ready yet. So that's what the Texas Department of Transportation is working toward now, is making everything as shovel-ready as possible, that when those funds break loose, and it may not all come from the Department of Defense, but from whatever source, and there are several ports to planes are pursuing, it'll happen. We look at the recent improvement up in Big Spring, the half of the bypass that they've made. They're working on the second half now. That was built to interstate highway standards, the vision of I-27, but it was a more major project than that particular highway district had funding for. Realizing it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle, something that had never happened before, several highway districts from Lubbock south came together and pooled their funds and put them into that Big Spring project. So it's cooperation like that that's going to get this thing done. And again, we're looking forward to it, maybe not for us, but for our kids and grandkids. But each step of the way, any highway improvement that's done is going to benefit us all. Look at the safety improvements with the passing lane south of here.
Makes a difference.
Okay, thanks for asking that.
Thank you both.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All are welcome.
Moving on, item 5B, consider approving a resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in the sum not to exceed $168,000 in support of establishing a construction trades program at Howard College to be partially funded under the Texas Workforce Commission High Demand Skills Development Grant, a project authorized under Chapter 501 of the Texas Development Corporation Act. Presentation by Mr. Roland Pena.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
This item seeks approval of a resolution in support of Howard College for the completion of the funding for the new construction trades program at Howard College. Howard College and the Concho Valley Workforce Development Board and the Home Builders Association identified a critical need for the training program in construction trades. So they have developed a project and a program that will help introduce and train and promote the general skills needed to complete a house. That would be phase 1 of the program. Phase 2 and phase 3 includes adding welding and craftsman building components, industrial trades. Most of our projects are very dynamic in nature. The Home Builders Association took the lead and the effort and raised $500,000 along with other local businesses and the Health Foundation. So big credit to them. However, there's still a need for additional funds to complete the program. I'm going to allow Jamie to speak here in a little bit. But we are seeking a grant, high skills development grant, like we did last year. This will help pay for the additional infrastructure cost, the administration. These would be the instructors and additional materials to help launch the program. So Costa DC and Howard College and the Concho Valley Workforce Development Board will team up again to apply for this grant. This is similar to the one that we submitted and received in the LVN to RN program. It will require an economic development agreement with Howard College. A big thanks to Mike Buck, who is always very instrumental in identifying the grant program to apply for at the state level. This is with the Texas Workforce Commission. Today's request is going to be for an up to amount of $168,000. You notice the amount needed is slightly under that amount. The matching portion of that will come from the Workforce Development Board and the state of $100,000. So this brings a total of $268,000 to help complete the program. I am open to answer any questions, and I also would invite Jamie Rainey to come up here if you have any questions for her to help supplement my presentation.
Hey, Roland, so it's up to 168, so it's not 168,000?
That's correct. We have in the in your background 167,769. That's the number that we have arrived at to this point. So we just made it 168,000. We may not use the full 168. We just may use this number, but those are the early preliminary numbers. Mike, you want to come up here as well in case I have questions for you? Yeah, go ahead.
Mike Buck with the Workforce Development Board. Roland and I have been following this whole process for about a year and a half, I believe. It's been very exciting to see business engaged as they are engaged with this. I think it makes it a highly successful solution in the long term to have business driving their needs, and Howard College working closely with them. The key to the program is for this funding. The key was to finish it up. The business and Howard College have put together a lot of effort and work to raise, I think it's well over $500,000 now, to build the infrastructure for the program, outfit the building with some of the equipment. The problem with it is getting the classes to move forward from there, and this type of initiative is to extend or support Howard College as they get their feet on the ground and get it running. The $168,000 primarily funds a lot of items that will sustain the program for the future. The biggest cost, which will be the training materials, the materials to build the tiny house, and some of the classroom materials that I cannot fund through TWC. That works out to about $100,000, and I can provide you the specifics if you like that. But there's also some building infrastructure costs that are part of that, and when you roll it all up, it's running up until around $167,000. By doing that, I can pay for salaries, I can pay for classroom, desk, furniture, textbooks, and all those other items that I'm allowed to pay for. So we're getting most bang for our buck from Texas Workforce Commission. The key to the program, I think, and Jamie can explain better, are these tiny houses. If we can build the tiny house and sell it, it will self-sustain the program materials for future classes. And I think that's the key to make this program work and grow and expand into those extra phases. Jamie, you can say something.
Good morning, Jamie Rainey, Howard College. We're really excited about the program. And let me tell you just a tad bit about funding for us. Howard College is funded really in two major ways, and that is through tuition and fees from our students and from state funding. Our state funding lags anything that's new. So we'll need to hire the program director and instructor way before this program actually gets started and on the ground. So they're working through all the curriculum and lining that out and finalizing purchasing equipment, and when that building is finished, getting it all ready for students to be there. But our funding starts way back here. In fact, the state funding, will be in a funding cycle. We're in that every 2 years, and that will start in March. So from March for 12 months, that time period will actually set the contact hour funding that we will have for the next 2 years. So we're way behind from state funding. So we need startup money to help us. However, when we do this, it really sets the stage for us to be able to have something that the students will actually build and will sell, and then those dollars will go back into the program. And so it will be self-sustaining once our state funding kicks in, and then those projects are sold and that revenue comes back into the program to sustain it. So that's why it's very important to have partners to help us start something, and then we're able to keep it going once our state funding also helps to kick in. So we really appreciate your consideration. Do you have any questions for me?
How long are we looking at from, say this is approved today, when you can start enrolling students?
Usually enrollment for spring starts right before Thanksgiving. And then it will continue up until actually spring starts, the spring semester starts. These classes will not start until March, so it's in our second 8 weeks of the spring, so we can take registration up until then. We'll start with a class of 25, And then our goal would be to start a second class in June. With the way we're building the building, we have 2 outside covered areas that 2 projects can be happening at the same time. And so we'll first get the first class going, get that all underway, and then by summer, we hope to be able to start the second program.
So theoretically, this project, y'all are pretty much ready to go. It could be starting in 2018.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're in the process right now of finalizing the engineering work, if you will, on the slab. And as soon as that's done, the full permit package will be submitted to our permits department. And we have a very aggressive schedule, but the plans are for that building to be completely finished by March 1st. So our students will have a lab when they come to school. We'll have a classroom in the West Texas Training Center, and we have ample classroom space there. We just don't have any lab space. And so this building will provide that. And our wonderful building community, I've watched them before do something amazing, pull things together and do amazing things, like if you remember back a while, they helped the Meals for the Elderly build a building. And they all came together and did that, like an old-timey barn raising. And so I can't wait to see how this works, and we'll have lots of pictures to show you as we progress through this project.
Let me add just one more thing, if I haven't made it clear. I believe it has a lot of potential, and while we're talking about construction trades, I believe we can complement it with industrial trades, as you heard, welding and additional trades, as we continue to move forward in the manufacturing, developing more manufacturing. I think this will help prepare us and prepare our workforce for the future. If you read the background material, we do have a critical need for that type of a workforce, and that is lacking right now. So,
Any other questions, comments?
I'd like to make the motion that we go ahead and approve, and as well, I'd like to throw in the comment that looking at $168,000, when we look at the number of citizens we have in San Angelo, all the way from birth to cradle to grave, so to speak, that's less than a $2 contribution per individual in this city. I think it's well worthy of us providing the taxpayers' money to seed this project and see it to grow and flourish. Thank you. And I also appreciate that you're doing this at the speed of business.
Second.
All right, Tommy. All right, we have a motion and a second.
I have a quick question,
go
if
ahead,
I can.
Tom.
Are we getting out to the Central High School and Lakeview High School freshman campus? What kind of promotion are we doing?
Marketing dollars.
Right now, we do dual credit classes with the San Angelo Independent School District on our site. There's just not room to share their lab space. Those classes are full right now. A unique thing about this would be they are actually taking 2 college-level classes through their program. Those 2 classes will actually fit into the program that's developed for adult learners now. So those students, when they graduate, can come into the program and they'll already have 2 of the 5 classes out of the way. What this is going to allow will be all of our smaller schools surrounding San Angelo to actually get students in, because those classes are full, so they can't take any more students there. So this will allow us to be able to have more dual credit students that will be able to start. Now, they would start the following fall, because just on starting their schedule and when they're planning, when they're recruiting students for programs, that cycle will be the fall of 2018 before those high school students would be ready to come into a program. But yes, sir,
Great.
absolutely.
Fantastic.
One just quick question, and then we'll call for the vote. In those funds that are raised, do we have marketing dollars? Did you guys set aside marketing dollars to get it out there into the community for people to sign up for the classes? Or how are we going to get it out? Sure.
Brenda Gunter again. As it relates to marketing classes, I will tell you, you've got the whole entire city's home building, industrial building community behind it. In addition to what you're looking at today, the Home Builders Association, in combination with the Texas Home Builders Association, have in fact put together the funds so that the first 25 students will be tuition-free, no cost. So I think the issue's not going to be getting the message out. It's going to be figuring out who the first 25 are. And what's important to me is that not only is this something that we need to continue the economic development here in San Angelo, but we need an opportunity for these young kids to know that if they're not interested in a four-year college, that there's a program and an opportunity to get a livable wage instead of a minimum wage. And our home builders will tell you today the cost of building a home is directly impacted by the lack of subcontractors and skilled laborers. So we need it to ensure economic development, but we also need it to ensure that the young folks today have a way to make a living and can stay here and provide for themselves. So it has tremendous breadth in terms of its impact on this community.
Thank you. I have a motion by John, a second by Scott. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, it's about partnerships, and you were so gracious and helped us with the RN program, and it's wonderful. It's full again this semester, and so we know that we'll be able to come back and tell you the same thing for this program. So thank you so much for your support.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
I was asking Mike when can we expect to hear from the state on that grant, and he thinks that maybe in a couple of weeks. So thank you for your support there. We'll take that to City Council for ratification.
Moving on, item 5C, consider a resolution authorizing the use and sales tax funds for the expansion of the training mission at Goodfellow Air Force Base, a project authorized for Type 4B development corporations under Texas Local Government Code, Section 501.104, relating to a certain military bases or missions, and authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute an MOU with Tom Green County and Goodfellow Air Force Base on behalf of the corporation and such other legal documents necessary to the project. Presentation by Roland Pena.
Every one of our projects are determined by the board. Every one of the resolutions will ask for the determination and authorization of a project. This one is no different. It will require a memorandum of understanding with Tom Green County and Goodfellow Air Force Base. You may recall that Costa DC did approve under a project name, not specifically identified Goodfellow Air Force Base, because we were under confidential discussions. As you know, most of the grants are very competitive, and we try to keep all of that information confidential. I'm glad that Mike Boyd is in the audience. Mike Boyd and Carol Ann Bonds and the mayor and several folks have been very instrumental with those discussions at Goodfellow Air Force Base. The funds will allow us to play a role, Costa DC to play a role in helping to fund local contribution requirement under the state governor's grant called the Defense Economic Adjustment Assistant Grant. Once again, just like prior year when Costa DC helped to fund two renovations of facilities to help expand the mission at Goodfellow Air Force Base, Tom Green County will serve as the fiscal agent and administrator, sort of the project manager of the project. We believe that it has the potential to add additional expansion of intelligence training, not only for this one particular project, but in the future. The project does entail renovations of approximately 24,000 square feet of two other facilities. It does accommodate highly classified classrooms, space for instructors, a psychologist that'll be on campus. It'll also help increase dining for 150 personnel. The total cost of the project is estimated at $8.8 million. We believe that it'll have an economic impact for our community in the form of additional instructors, additional jobs being created by active duty and civilian jobs, and it is a project authorized under the local government code, section 104. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have, and I'd be glad to also invite Mike Boyd in the event he'd like to say something.
Morning.
Appreciate y'all consideration of the grant up to 1.5 million. The grant has been applied to the state. It was done last week. We'll know in December. We've got $20 million from the state, of which part of this money will come from that we're applying for. There were several grants that were applied for last week, so we'll know something in about 60 days. Off the record, and that's a secret classroom. The opportunity to do this is really instrumental because cyber threat, cybersecurity is probably on the forefront of what's going on. Either it's in our business or that we read in the paper every day. And by allowing these classrooms, the additional missions that we're going to pick up is there's one regional facility that's in D.C. that teaches cyber threats and cybersecurity. The federal government wants to regionalize that, and we've applied for San Angelo and for Goodfellow Air Force Base to be one of those sites. That'd probably be a 3-day class is what they're saying. Everybody from DPS to Homeland Security, Border Patrol, they all have to come have those annual classes. And so that put a lot of heads in beds, that we say. And we've already applied to be one of those first sites. Obviously with Colonel Downs that was here and now is in D.C. is pushing that hard for us, and I really think we got an opportunity to do that. We're picking up 2 additional missions that supplement what we're applying for here today, and not publicly yet, but there's a third that we think we're going to pick up. We know we'll get at least 20 permanent party. That'll add somewhere around 600 to 650 more students. So that'll put us over the 15,000 mark on students. If we get the third mission that'll be coming out of Florida, then we'll pick up about another 500 students. And that all should happen sometime in fiscal year 18. So obviously we support it. We think the growth is there. We think it's important that we pick up bits and pieces of the Air Force mission. Air Force from a standpoint from other than the Army and the Navy and the Marines, the numbers are going to grow. 7,000 next year, and that will help us. So we're poised, I think, to grow like we need to. Dorms are set to be built. There's Milcon dollars set for 18 for these additional students. And we've also got coordination with local hotels in town to agree to go on the per diem, for the military per diem, to house those students if the dorms aren't built. So I think we've got everything set for that small growth pattern that we're looking for in the next 24 months. Appreciate your consideration. I'll answer any questions.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion by Scott. Second by Todd. Any other comments, questions? All right, call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Mike. Next item on the agenda, 5D, consider adoption of a resolution authorizing the use and sales tax proceeds for a project authorized under the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 505, for economic development promotional purposes, sponsoring the 2018 San Angelo Business Plan competition, authorizing the board president to negotiate, execute on an advertising services agreement with McLaughlin Advertising, not to exceed $5,000 for advertising services, therefore, and recommending ratification by City Council. Presentation by Nora Navarez.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So as Juan stated, what this is that we are seeking a board approval for the agreement with McLaughlin Advertising for the purpose of promoting the business plan competition. We are working on that. You may recall that past 2 years we've had 2 successful business plan competitions, so we're in the works hopefully to get the third one. McLaughlin Advertising has been instrumental with the advertising for the business plan. But not only for advertising, but also Stephen has been a key for the media, with the media. And because of his relationships with the media, he's been able to provide us in-kind prizes. Not only are we just providing money, but our media folks are providing substantial media in-kind prize so that they can either produce a commercial or also advertising for themselves. And as we all know that as startup business, sometimes advertising can be a little bit of an expense for them. So we hope that also the kickoff, as like I stated, we're planning on, hopefully, maybe we'll be doing the announcement here in a couple of months. So that's all I have. If you have any other questions.
Any questions?
Make the motion that we approve.
Motion by Mr. Barrios, second by Todd. Any other discussion? No? Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Nora.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nora.
Next, item 5E, consider approving the Costa DC City of San Angelo agreement for provisions of administrative services for fiscal year 2018 in the amount of $578,088 in subsequent years of fiscal year 2019 and 2020 as annual budgets are approved by the board, recommending ratification by City Council and authorizing the board president to execute the agreement in substantially the same form as the attached. Presentation by Roland Pena.
This request seeks your approval to authorize the board president to execute an agreement with the City of San Angelo for the provision of administrative services, just for the benefit of the public. Costa DC contracts with the City of San Angelo for staff services, the Economic Development Department, and all the other associated resources that are required to assist fully carrying out the mission of economic development within the organization. The fiscal year 2018 amount is budgeted for $578,088 as approved by the board earlier during the year. This is a multi-year contract so that we can avoid having to come back to the board other than amending for any increased amounts, any changes that happened in future fiscal years. So it's all approved by the board, but we just don't have to go through a process of developing a brand new contract. It does require performance measures, and those performance measures are in the contract. I'd be glad to help answer any questions you may have. One other point I'd like to make, you may remember that we added some new departments during the budget process, and there are performance measures in the contract for those new departments. Exhibit B of your contract on page 13 shows the individual amounts for those different departments.
You guys have any questions?
I don't have any questions, just an off-the-cuff sort of comment. This is one of those administrative tasks that, of course, is necessary. I just think it's funny that the party that we're going to be paying this money to has to ratify the payment of the money. It's kind of convoluted logic, but it is the way the system works.
That's
I
right.
make the motion, we approve.
Motion by Mr. Barrios, second by Mr. Coles. Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Roland. Item 5F, consider appointing a staff member as board secretary in accordance with the bylaws of the City of San Angelo Development Corporation, Article 3, Section 2.b, which states the secretary of the corporation shall be a city staff member assigned to the corporation under the contract between the corporation and the City of San Angelo as approved by the board of directors. Presentation by Mr. Roland Pena.
You may have noticed in the last couple of meetings that our secretary has not been here, Maria Franco and Brian Kendrick, and so to my right, your left, you have noticed that Nora and Shannon have been taking the minutes. Brian.
It's not Bob. It's not Bob.
Brian has some increased workload and has notified me that he's going to be unable to serve as the board secretary and unable to be at the meetings to take the minutes. He is a department that is not listed in the city staff services as a result of that notification, so I took that department out of the contract. And so in accordance with the bylaws, which states the Secretary of the Corporation shall be a city staff member assigned to the corporation under contract between the corporation and the City of San Angelo as approved by the Board of Directors, we're asking for an appointment by the board for a city staff member.
Could we appoint you? And,
Kind of hard for him to do it.
well, no, I mean, he I mean, if we appointed you, could you, I guess since they're doing it, could you delegate?
And just like Brian, who served as the board secretary, he
appointee.
wasn't here, and he
Yeah.
delegated to Maria. So
You guys okay with that? I mean,
If they're okay with it.
are you ladies okay with?
And you do qualify as the city staff member,
yes, sir.
even though you're Cosa DC? I just wanted to make, for clarity.
Well, I am a city employee.
That's right.
Yeah, he is.
We're all.
I'm asking more for the public knowledge.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I understand.
Okay. I make the motion, we approve Roland Pena to be officially our secretary, and that his designees can stand in when necessary.
I'll second that.
All right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Will you be asking for another raise?
All right, next item on the agenda, 5G, public hearing regarding the expenditure with McLaughlin Advertising of up to $60,000 for a project consisting of a promotional campaign to expand the air service marketing initiative and advertise the city of San Angelo for the purpose of developing new and expanded business enterprises. Presentation by Mr. Roland Pena.
Mr. President, what we have following, along with this item, all of these items are going to be public hearings. I think what we'll do in the future is we'll create one public hearing and feature them. So if you don't mind, what I'll do is I'll explain the purpose of the public hearing for the benefit of the public and the audience, and then we'll take every one of these items individually, and you can invite public comment. Open up the public hearing and invite public comment.
Sure.
So this is a requirement under Section 505-159 of the Local Government Code for a 4B corporation that we have to have a hearing required to undertake a project. So we have to have a hearing, at least one public hearing before spending or undertaking the project. We usually will post public notice, which is also another requirement. We cannot expend the funds until 60 days after it is published, but the public hearing is also required within those 60 days. And so this is for that purpose. Public hearing number one is the air service marketing that you have read, Mr. President. It's regarding an expenditure with McLaughlin Advertising. We did approve that item last month, if you recall, so now we're following up with the public hearing. This is an amount expenditure of up to $60,000 for a year-long campaign, a promotional campaign to help expand the air service marketing initiative that has been created by the City Council to help support air service at the airport. It does include advertising the city of San Angelo, and it does promote the development and expansion of business enterprises. That really is the only way that we could make this this expenditure meet the guidelines of the sales tax law. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions, and if you don't have any questions, you can open it up for public hearing.
Okay, we'll open it up for a public hearing, public comments. Anybody that wishes to speak, please come up. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close it. Now, Roland, since we've approved, we can move on to the next item.
That's correct.
Okay. Next item, 5H, public hearing regarding the use and sales tax funds in the amount not to exceed $100,000 for a project that entails acquisition costs of $25,000 and professional engineering surveying services, including the cost of up to $75,000 for a 17.58 acre parcel of real property fronting the Houston Expressway within an area bounded by Southwest Boulevard, Sherwood Way, and Sunset Drive, and a development agreement with the city pursuant to which the property will be improved for resale and commercial development as permitted under Chapter 505 of Texas Development Corporation Act to promote and develop new and expand business enterprises that create or retain primary jobs or that provide facilities that enhance convention purposes and tourism. Presentation by Roland Pena.
This is another item that's already been approved by the board, and so we follow up with the public hearing. As I explained earlier, it is for acquisition cost for the total amount of $100,000. It does include the professional engineering, surveying, closing costs. That includes the environmental studies. You've mentioned the site of the parcel, 17.58 acres on Houston Expressway, between Houston Expressway and Sherwood Way. It does allow for improvement for resale and commercial development, and does include a development agreement with the city of San Angelo. The project will be utilized to promote and develop new and expanded business enterprises. As you read in your caption, and I apologize for that long caption. We can blame Dan for that, maybe.
Thank you.
And it does allow for the creation and retention of primary jobs and or the facilities that will help enhance convention purposes. With that, be glad to answer any questions, or you can open up a public hearing.
Any questions, guys?
Just one administrative question. I notice on the printed form here, Brian Kendrick is still noted on there as corporate secretary. With the change we just made, will any of this need to, or will it get complicated for us?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're referring to the prior resolution, or are you referring to the contract?
Just on the written resolution where it's signed off by the public hearing.
Right. That was approved last month, so it's a resolution from last month. No issues there. Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Can I just refresh my memory with this?
Mm-hmm.
We are acquiring the land for $25,000 from the city. We're doing the study. Whatever the details of the study come back, we will then make a decision if we move forward.
Correct. You may also notice I do have, we do have it listed on the agenda to discuss in executive session, since we have some development on that, but that is correct. The studies will determine whether we have a fatal flaw, and the contract does allow us to pull out in the event that we do have a fatal flaw.
Any other questions? We'll go ahead and open up for the public hearing. Anybody that'd like to come up and talk or speak on it? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing. Moving on to the next item, 5I, public hearing regarding the use and sales tax, sales and use tax funds in the amount not to exceed $300,000 to provide an economic development incentive to Detmar Logistics LLC for a project related to business enterprises that create or retain primary jobs as authorized for a Type B corporation under Local Government Code, Chapter 504, Subchapter C. Presentation by Ms. Shannon Scott.
Actually, I'm gonna fill in for her since she's since she has the minutes.
She's secretary now.
This is funny how that works, huh?
Yeah.
So this is another item that you have approved in a prior board meeting. Economic incentives not to exceed $300,000 for a project. This project involves the expansion of a business that will help to create retained primary jobs. Some of the details on the project included a capital investment of $5 million. We expect that to be more, up to 120 jobs over 5 years. And I mentioned this before and mentioned at City Council. It is a dynamic project, so we expect more jobs than what you're seeing today. The incentives are for $2,500 per job, and the annual economic output for the project is $75.5 million estimated. So I'm glad to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, you can open up the public hearing.
Any questions, guys? Open up for public hearing on this item. Close public hearing. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, 5J, public hearing regarding the expenditure with Park Hill Smith Cooper Inc. in the sum not to exceed $280,000 to perform professional engineering and surveying services for infrastructure for the San Angelo Business and Industrial Park for a project necessary to promote or develop new or expanded business enterprises as authorized under the Texas Development Corporation Act. Presentation by Roland Pena.
So I'm going to fill in for Bob. We thought maybe just a little bit more efficient, and since I was already up here. This is public hearing number 4, another item that the board has previously approved for a task order with an expenditure of up to $280,000 to expand the infrastructure to phase 2 of the San Angelo Business and Industrial Park. The driver for this, just for the benefit of the public, because I know the board already knows, is the AEP new facility, transmission services facility, and their constrained timeline. So it's a very short timeline, and they're moving very quickly. These are the services included in the task order, the surveying and platting. We will need the platting specifically to help expedite this project, to help AEP, and also look at the rest of phase 2. It will include the infrastructure design, and these are obviously these are all detailed. Total task order of $201,000 plus, but we do have the cushion of $280,000 in the event that we need additional funds. I don't expect it to make the $280,000. There is a clause in the contract that allows for reimbursable expenses, but it's a very small amount. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer, or Bob can assist.
Any questions? Open it up for public, or you open it up for public hearing. Seeing no one come up, closing public hearing. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which was 5K, what we pulled from the consent agenda, the approving the September 2017 financial statements. Okay, here comes Tina.
Morning, Board. Tina Darsky, Director of Finance. I'm going to present your year-end financial statements. We ended the year just slightly over our final amended revenue budget, so that's a good thing. Sales tax revenue's been up for 4 months in a row now, so we're excited about that. We think that we're starting to see an upward trend, and so we're continuing to watch that closely. Sales tax revenue for September was up 7.19%, and for October it was up 14.77%. Moving on to your economic development balance sheet, there's not a whole lot going on here, but I do want to point out that investments this year have yielded revenue of $99,423 in comparison with last year, where we yielded $51,131. So we've almost doubled our investment revenue, so that's a very good thing. Moving on to your income statement, you'll see again that increased investment revenue. We did also pay the city services contract this month, as well as payments to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and for phase 1 of the sewer line at the industrial park, and then an expenditure for Park Hill for the phase 2 at the industrial park. On your September balance sheet for the ballot side, you may have noticed a decrease to the unrestricted fund balance. That's in large part due to an adjustment made for debt service payments for the current and prior fiscal years. We discovered recently that there was a bond refunding issue in 2012 that was not appropriately allocated to the Development Corporation, nor was it budgeted on the Development Corporation's debt service schedule. And so the city had been making those payments over the last 5 years out of the city's debt service fund, and so now we need to reimburse the city from the Development Corporation for those payments. The total of those payments was about $2,380,000 for the 5-year period. So that's why that decrease is there. There are only 3 years left on that refunding issue, and so thankfully we'll have that paid off pretty quickly. And on your ballot income statement, you'll see here again that increase in interest on investments compared with last year. Last year, the interest revenue was $2,437,000 compared with this year, $17,221. So again, a good thing. Again, we paid the city services contract and finished off our debt service payments for the year. That's all I have. What questions do you have for me?
On the loan debt service, so we were short, or I guess money wasn't taken out, or how did?
Right, so the city has a debt service fund.
Okay.
And how the debt service for the Development Corporation works is that we transfer money from, the city pays all of the debt service, including Development Corporations. And we transfer over that money from the Development Corporation, writes a check to the city for their portion.
Okay.
So when we did this refunding issue in 2012, for some reason, it wasn't properly allocated to the Development Corporation to increase those debt service payments as it should have in those years from the way the debt was restructured. So now we are truing that up so that the money that was due to the city, that the city had been paying for those 5 years, is remitted to the city.
That getting missed.
I don't know, I was gonna,
lot of
Like
money.
an awful big.
that's a big number. So,
Yeah, it was budgeted on the city side, but somehow it got missed on the Development Corporation side.
so for like the last 5 years, we've
Yeah,
missed
so the
payments.
first 4 years there was only interest on that refunding issue, so it was only $140,000 a year. And so why it came up this year and we caught it was that the first principal payment came on that refunding, which was about $1.4 million. So that was
So
a big
you
red
guys
flag, and of course,
You guys were short. and
that's
all
how
that.
we caught it.
Yeah.
We're not missing anything going on right now, are we? That in the next 3 or 4 years is gonna come back to bite us?
No.
Tina,
Yes.
just a question. So this will true it up, and there's not any additional debt service payments needed in the future?
There are 3 more years on that refunding issue, so that will increase your debt service transfer for the next 3 years,
By what amount?
about $1.4 million.
Additional per year?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 2.3 and then 1.4 and 1.4.
That's correct.
That is on the ballot side, isn't it?
Yes, it is on the ballot side.
So it's really like 5 million.
6 million. But I mean,
6 million.
but recall that this is a debt issue that was issued by the city for the Development Corporation for that ballot project. I mean, it's not money that wouldn't have been due either way.
Sure, yeah.
Will this require any sort of budget amendment or anything?
Yes, we have a meeting this week to discuss that, and we will probably bring that back to you at a future meeting.
All right.
It's a hard pill to swallow, but it is what it is.
Yes, I agree. It was
and
hard for me as well.
We just need to take the next indicated step.
And we have, I guess, however this happened, we got measures in place so this doesn't happen again.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
Mr. Boyd, do you have something?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Picked this up over the last 5 years, and y'all do an annual audit, I assume, from the city. I'm not putting you on the spot. I mean, I'd ask the question, why didn't auditors pick it up if I had a question from your
Yeah.
group?
I don't have an answer for that.
I'm sure we'll have that discussion when we have our budget meeting.
Sure.
Well, I need a
Make
motion.
the motion that we approve.
I have a second.
I'll say.
As I said, gentlemen, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it just reduces the ballot side, but okay. And you said, just one more time, it's for
sure.
the next 3 years, 1.4?
Yes. And we will come up with a plan to make sure that we're able to cover that, and we'll bring it back to you.
Okay, so it's not, so it doesn't drain the ballot side.
That's right.
Any other questions, guys, or comments? Call for the vote. All those in favor of approving?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is closed session. Executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meeting, Subchapter D, exceptions to the requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. 6A, Section 551.087, 2, to deliberate and that the offer of financial or other incentive with a project 2017 E285 that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations. 6B, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding 17.58 acre parcel of real property fronting Houston Hart Expressway within the area bounded by Southwest Boulevard, Sherwood and Sunset Drive. It is 9:35. We're now in executive session. At 10:15 a.m., we're out of executive session. Next item on the agenda is follow-up on administrative issues. Consider items. Nothing to report. Thank you. 7B, announcements and consideration of future agenda items. We are planning a joint meeting with council, I guess sometime next month. Is that right, Roland?
Either the first or second meeting of November, and I'll have to follow up with the board via email.
All right.
Once we get that confirmed.
Item number 8. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.